Hi there. So we are just about to go to Salcombe by boat from the River Hamble, and I thought I'd share with you engine checks that you should do before you do a long trip. And so what we're going to do, I'm just going to go through. So it's very easy and simple. You can do it in just a few minutes, and it's mainly visual. So you're just looking for any issues before you start the engines, and then we'll do a couple of checks after you start the engines as well. So initially what we're going to be doing is, if I've grabbed a little bit of paper towel from here. So the first thing I want to do is literally have a look around under each engine, which I'm doing now, and just seeing if there's any water under the engines or any oil or antifreeze or anything like that. That would suggest the last time you used the boat it had some sort of leak, which is now sort of developing. But I can see both bilges under the engines are nice and clear. And then I'll check the centre bilge. If you have any water leaks, then the central bilge. So I'm just having a look down here. There's a little bit of water down here. You can always do the old lick test. Tastes a bit fresh, so I'd say that's a bit of fresh water in there.
You sure it's not a black water tank leak?
And yeah, it tastes a bit. No, it's fine. It's clear. If it's yellow or brown, I'd suggest not testing it. There's a little bit there. You can mop that up, so you've got a fresh area that's dry, or you can just know what it is, take a picture of it. So when you get on to the end of your journey, just see if it's increased at all, and then you know if you've got more of a water leak, especially if it's salt water. So salt water, you can get in there just through actually just people doing impeller changes and things like that. It's never been removed from a service, so it's good to make sure you've got dry bilges before you do a trip. And then after the trip, you'll know then if there's any more water. Again, in the back bilge as well, just having a quick check. It's always worth as well, you probably can't see, there is a float switch. So if you have a float switch like this, just turn it, and just to make sure the bilge pump is actually working if it fills up with water, and that one is. You pass that back. And then what we want to do is then just do a few engine checks. So the first one is very easily, just look in the weed traps and just see if there's a build-up of weed. If there's a little bit, don't worry too much. You can be a bit over the top with it. There's a tiny little bit of weed in this one, but as you can see, it's not really going to bother us while we're doing a journey. And I'd always just make sure the fitting on top is not loose as well. So just giving them a tweak. The next check we'll do is antifreeze. So this is an IPS 600 Volvo Penta, and the antifreeze check you do here. And all we're doing, we're peering in and just making sure there is enough antifreeze. Now this one has a little plastic lug that sticks out there, and it's also got a lug lower down as well. So if you can see the top one, but you can't see the bottom one, then you're at about the right level. You don't need to top it up. These do have sensors as well to tell you if they're low, so it'll alarm at the engine. You may also have a separate antifreeze reservoir, and we'll have a minimum and a max on there, and you just need to make sure you're within the minimum and maximum. Doesn't have to be on maximum, but as long as you're sort of halfway or above, you're fine. Next thing is oil checks. So very simply, and oil checks are good to do, but I'd say you don't have to do it every single journey, because if there's no oil leaks under the engine and the engine runs nice and clean, it doesn't smoke badly like blue smoke which would be burning oil, then generally check it now and again. And what we're looking for is the oil level to be sort of between min and max. Sometimes you have to leave the dipstick out for a minute first and then re-dip. And we can see on here it's actually probably a little bit low. We're sort of down the sort of bottom end of the hatched area. If you're within the hatched area, you're normally okay. But if you're doing a long distance trip, then it would be a good idea probably to top this one up ever so slightly, so we can see. Sometimes the oil will smear down the side, which you can see, but it should be the full coverage is actually where the level is. So you can see on the back there is no oil coverage until we get down to there. So the oil level is actually the bottom of the hatched area is minimum and that's maximum, so we're about there. Right, so we're a little bit low on that side. Hopefully this side is the right level, so we can show you. Whenever you take it out, always give it a wipe, because sometimes you'll get a false reading. Allow the oil level to come up the dipstick tube. Sometimes you get an airlock in there because this is sealed at the top, so you get a false reading as soon as you pull it straight out. And then on this one, you can see this one's about halfway. So again, that's a good reading actually. Again, you should find that if it's just been serviced, it should be on max. Maybe towards the end of the service, after a year, you'll probably find it'll be halfway, something like that. Sometimes you don't lose any at all. Sometimes engines can use a bit of oil, and then you'll have to top up during the season. So it is good to check now and again, especially if you're just about to do a long trip. You top the oil up actually in the oil caps here. You simply undo the cap, and then you top it up there. Obviously very prone to spillage, so you need to protect the area. Use a funnel if you need to. And then moving back, we really, if you can, so some engines you can, some you can't. We want to check the gearbox oils. So do you want to pop down, Andrew? And always while we're down here as well, we want to keep just keeping a good look around, just looking for any potential leaks. Anywhere that's corroding would suggest the seawater leak is starting from somewhere. If you find any seacocks, so these IPS engines have seacocks for the water inlet, just work them. Obviously make sure they're open, make sure no one who's just serviced it has actually left anything closed. The biggest problems we ever have is when someone has just serviced the engine. They maybe turn a seacock off where you would normally leave one open, or leave something loose. You know, it's rare it happens, but it does happen. So it's always worth just making sure everything is working. And then on the IPS, on the back of the gearboxes, right on the very back where my arm is, there's a dipstick built in. And this is always the scary moment because these are prone to water ingress if they have any fault at all. It is normally water ingress. So we're looking, again, we'll give it a wipe. I can already see that this one is nice and clear. If it's got any water ingress at all, it'll have a creamy look to it, a creamy texture. And again, you should be maximum, which this is. You can see the dry area is literally where my finger is. So we're right on maximum, and it is very, very clean, which I'm sure Andrew is looking very relieved since we're on his boat.
Very relieved.
I've still got to check the other one yet, though. You know, so
50%.
50% relieved. Right, always make sure you screw it back in properly. Again, I'll give it a wipe. Again, Andrew will be relieved because it does look clean. And again, we're looking exactly the same, right on maximum. So, and again, nice clean oil. So I've got no problems with this. The only thing I'd probably do before the trip is top up that starboard engine and just make sure that oil, you know, is at a good level. The other thing as well, if you have fuel filters, so you have fuel filters on the engines, of course, but you also have them between the engines and the fuel tanks. And this one, as you can see, has got a clear glass bowl. So we're just looking to see if there's any water or dirt. You can see there's a little bit of dirt build up on there. Any water would separate straight to the bottom. So the beauty of this being red diesel is any water will be clear, and it would be clearly visible in the bottom of here. If there's water, there would actually be there'd be a level which had the water. It doesn't mix with the diesel. It will separate straight away, and you'll see it down there. If you do ever have any, you can drain off any dirt or debris off the drain off the bottom into a container. And you just simply loosen that until the water comes out and then do it back up again. If there is water in there and dirt, the only place it's come from is the fuel tank. If it's persistent and gets worse and you're always getting water, you will have to look at getting the fuel tanks cleaned at some point. And there's one on the other side as well. And that's most of your basic engine checks, apart from the belts. So on these IPS 600 engines, they actually have covers on. Very, very hard to see the belt. But if we're just doing basic engine checks, we don't want to go to the trouble of taking all the covers off just to check the belt. But what you can do, you can actually reach round under and just find a length of belt and just have a feel of it and see if you can twist it any more than sort of 90 degrees. If you can, it's loose, and you probably want to adjust it before you do a long trip. So I'm just checking both sides. This side's a little bit more awkward to get to, so I'm going to lean over the engine and go in the same side as I did on the starboard. And again, I can feel that belt. It feels nice condition, and I can't twist it any more than sort of 45 degrees, so it's a nice taut belt. You will get a build-up of belt dust. You can see on the alternator here there is actually a build-up of brake dust. That is fairly normal, but if you do find the belts are squeaking, even though it feels like the belts are nice and taut, it would be worth tweaking them, see if that goes. If it doesn't, you will have to replace the belts, because it's probably a suggestion that they're getting a bit old. But as it stands at the moment, these belts are okay. There's a bit of brake dust, but the belts are nice and taut, so I don't have any concerns about them for today. But really, that is your basic engine checks. And even though we're on a Fairline Targa 44 with IPS 600s, this works for any engine. So do your engine checks, check your bilges, check your levels. But that's not all now. We now start the engines and just check for leaks if the engines are running. So we do this afterwards. So, and we check for water flow as well. Yep, go ahead. And starboard. So if you come back. So what we're looking at now is water flow, which you can see. Water flow again. And then I'll have a look back through the bilges and under the engines for any water leaks or oil leaks that may have just started just on that startup. I normally pay particular attention to where the impellers are, which is this side, and I'll put my head over to this side. Good. Then what I normally do is I'll go up to the helm. So I'll come up to the helm, I'll check voltages are good, oil pressure and temperatures will build up gradually, and we can see the oil pressures and voltage are very similar for both engines. And what we'll do next is, before you leave the berth, what another thing you want to do is just make sure everything's actually working. So you put one engine in and out of gear, in forward and reverse, same with the other one, forward and reverse. I also make sure if there is a bow thruster that it operates. This boat doesn't have a bow thruster because it has a joystick. So you can also just check the operation of the joystick before you leave the hoe, before you let your lines off. Check the steering, so you're getting full steering either way. Always set it to the centre before I leave. But really, as a basic check, that's about it. So we've been talking for about 10 minutes. I can probably do an engine check in half that. We've been talking over it. But that is your basic engine checks. And then I would say, if we top up that starboard engine with a little bit of oil, we're ready to go. See you in Salford.